Good evening and welcome to this meeting for Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. If everybody could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Grigsby? Here. Mrs. McCarthy?
Here.
Mrs. Saxon?
Here.
Mrs. Tamira?
Here.
Mr. Vaca?
Here. Finalization of the agenda. Is there anything that needs to be added and or removed?
The agenda is final as presented.
Thank you. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the written summary of the regular minutes for the meetings on August 1st, 2023 and August 15th, 2023.
Move. Second.
Moved by Ms. Saxon, second by Ms. Tamira. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Saxon?
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira?
Yes.
Mr. Grigsby? Yes. Mrs. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Vaca?
Yes. All right, we'll move right into the superintendent treasurer's report.
Excellent. So it is that time of year when the state releases our report card, and Dr. Miller is here to share with the board some great information about where North Ridgeville City Schools stands. Dr. Miller.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here tonight. It's always nice to be up here when I have great news to share. So thank you. So I'm just going to give a real brief overview of the report card. So this is based on last year's data, but was just released last week. So as you guys are aware, we've been following a timeline to implement this new version of the report card. So you'll see then this year that they're going to review the results and cut scores. There will likely be some shifts and changes then in the following year. And then in 2025, that's when we'll see some of the additional like college and career readiness actually hitting the report card. Right now, everything is just informational. So that will be coming as ratings in 2025. So there is an overview of our report card. As you can see, fabulous. 4.5 stars out of 5. That's a pretty good Yelp rating, so we're very pleased with that. And you'll also notice that compared to last year, we continue to do very well. So I'll break down some of those individual areas and we can kind of get a better view of what's happening across the district. So for achievement, you'll see that we got 4 out of 5 stars again, as we did last year. But what you don't notice from the overall star ratings is how much better our achievement scores actually were from last year. So last year we met 3 indicators overall as a district with that 80% threshold. This year we actually met 7 indicators as a district. So significant improvement. We met 4th grade math, 5th grade ELA, 5th grade science, 8th grade science, high school biology, and then also high school American government and high school American history. So we are very pleased with those overall results. Other areas just to note, if you're looking at that overall information, we did see some dips in our 3rd grade ELA and our 6th grade math. And as we had discussed last year, we're actually seeing those same trends across the entire nation. So those are not unique to North Ridgeville. Those are actually national trends right now. And it's because of the effects of COVID. Because in those particular grades, those students missed some really important foundational skills, and we're still working to catch them up. So the other piece that I just wanted to point out again, we shifted the way that we are testing our students in math for those accelerated classes. So you'll notice that there are some dips in the math areas, and it's because we better aligned our testing practices to match what the students were actually taking as far as the content. So 6th graders and 7th graders taking pre-algebra are now taking the 8th grade test. And we did see that dip in our 7th grade scores as a result. So if you look at our PI, you'll notice more good news here. We actually went up from 82.2% last year up to 83.5%. So that coupled with our achievement scores got us those 4 stars out of 5. So very pleased in that area. One of the areas that we are most pleased with overall is progress. This, as you know, is looking at students' scores from one year to the next. So no matter how they score academically on that achievement side, are we growing them from wherever they start? And on this chart, that green is showing that we met expectations. So we are growing them at least that 1 year's worth of growth. And then anything that is blue or that it looks like a dark gray color up there, that would be significantly more than 1 year's worth of growth. So we are really doing well in this area. You can see across the board, especially in math and science, we are pushing our students, no matter where they come to us, where they start from, we're pushing them significantly more than 1 year's worth of growth in many areas. So to get a 5 here is really impressive. And this will, over time, continue to close that achievement gap. So gap closing, again, 5-star rating here. Super excited about that one as well. So this is looking at our student groups, and you'll see those colored lines. The red dot is where our student groups, our subgroups performed and compared to their typical peers. So when we look at our academically disadvantaged students, we look at our EL students, our students with disabilities, how are they performing compared to their peers? Are they meeting the same benchmarks? And they're actually doing very well compared to their peers. So this, again, to have a 5-star rating here really means that we're focusing on the needs of all learners. And it's really impressive to be able to say that we got 5 stars. So this looks at chronic absenteeism, this next slide here. And again, we noticed that there was a pretty big drop in absenteeism across the state, partially because 2 years ago, we were still having students mandated stay home for 5 days. So last school year, we didn't have as many students staying home for significant amounts of time. And we did notice a decrease in our chronic absenteeism. So we went from 22.1% the year prior to 18.6%. We're hoping that that will continue to improve as we improve our practices here. And we're really making sure that we follow up with those families as well. On the right-hand side, you'll see that's gifted information, which now fits under the PI score as well. And we did notice some changes in our gifted numbers, mostly due to reporting. We are more accurately reporting what is happening now at especially the high school level when students are subject area accelerated. So that wasn't the case. We didn't used to track all of our students at the high school level, and we now are. And we also have shifted our practices. So we shifted our math pathways. We've added in classes to allow more students to be accelerated earlier on and just better reflect what we want students to be able to grow into as they start to get older. So we've added more students in physical science in 8th grade. And we've also added an honors ELA, which isn't reflected here, but goes along with that slide. So I just wanted to be able to say it again. Graduation, we earned 3 stars out of 5 with graduation. 92.5% here overall is our weighted grade. And you'll notice the next one down, 94 point, whatever that is, 94%. It was actually only 89% the year prior. So even though it's not where we want it to be yet, it is still 5 percentage points higher than it was the year before. So again, we're very pleased that we are trending in the right direction, and we will continue to make sure that we have additional pathways for students so that we can continue to increase that number. And that is the 4-year graduation rate. So early literacy, this is actually the only area where we saw a drop. All of the other areas we maintained. We did drop in early literacy. And again, it is partially because that group of students that was in 3rd grade last year, now are current 4th graders, they really took a hit with COVID in their foundational skills. And we're seeing that again here in these numbers as well. So there's 3 components to this measure. You'll notice that the improving K-3 literacy is 33.4%. It was actually the exact same percentage last school year, which means that when students are identified as not being on track, we are moving them to on track at a consistent rate as we were the year prior. So that's all of K through 3. We are really helping those students to move back to on track status. Again, I'd like it to be even better than 33%, but we are getting there. The 2 areas where we saw a dip here would be proficiency in 3rd grade. We did drop from a 65% down to a 55%. So that would be the number of students in 3rd grade that met that 700 proficient score on the test. And then we did also have a drop in our promotion score. So prior to this past year, we were really able to get most of our students to that promotion score, not necessarily proficient, but that promotion score, whether it be on the state test or on one of the alternative assessments. This past year, we even with all of our interventions, we still had several students that were unable to meet that threshold. So we will continue to provide those students interventions in 4th grade. We have additional staff support this year to help to make sure that they are able to get on track before the end of the school year. And I can also reassure you that our current numbers K through 3 are already looking better than they were at this time last year. College, career, workforce, and military readiness. So this is all informational, but you can see there that we are providing lots of other opportunities for our students. And this continues to be a goal. Lee Armbruster has really done a tremendous job making sure that we have lots of options for our kids. So we are very pleased with all of these different areas. And you'll see there the SAT participation, honors diplomas. We had a ton of those last year. AP, all of those different areas where it's showing that beyond just what the report card is demonstrating for academics, we are offering other pathways. And you know that we've also continued to work toward our CPE pathways as well for this coming school year. And we saw an increase there overall as well from 40% to 44.5%. And then overall, you can see all of the building ratings there. And these are similar to our district ratings. We were able to maintain our high scores in many of these areas. We did, of course, see that drop in the K2 literacy or K3 literacy piece, which we are continuing to address in many ways this school year. And then I also just wanted to point out that Liberty BCLC only have that gap closing measure. So for that piece, they only have gifted in their gap closing measure. So that's the only piece of the gap closing that they're scored on. So it's based on the number of students that are identified and the number of students served from their buildings. So that is a very high level overview of our report card. Any questions?
Yeah, Heather, you mentioned the promotion to 4th grade.
Yes.
So we had to hold some students back.
So we actually did not. They
Okay.
changed the law in the budget bill. So we were able to promote all students to 4th grade, but we are continuing to monitor them. So they will all continue to have a RIM. They will all continue to have intervention services. So even though they didn't meet that score, they are all still in 4th grade.
Okay.
So it was a caveat in the budget bill that we were allowed to work with parents, and all of the parents of those students wanted them to be placed in 4th grade anyways.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great question.
So Dr. Mulder, the graduation, we're responsible to track every incoming freshman till graduation, correct?
We are.
Any child,
After graduation.
right, so any child that leaves district and relocates multiple districts, we have a really hard time tracking those, and that affects our graduation rate, correct?
It does. I mean, there are other things that we can do in-house as well. I think there are multiple factors that we're seeing in that graduation rate, but that certainly is one of them.
So our graduation rate's actually higher if we were to take those students that we're responsible for as incoming freshmen.
It would be higher.
Just want to make sure the public's aware of that.
It would be.
Awesome job to everybody, everything that's being done.
So, and just so you know, really the threshold here for where school districts should be is a 3 out of 5 stars. So anything, just like with OTES or anything else, like that's the benchmark, and then anything above that is exceeding expectations. So we're very pleased with our 4.5 stars.
Fantastic.
And then the readiness component moving forward. Are you comfortable with the matrix that the state's rolling out for this? How they're scoring this? Do we have a lot of that information yet, or is it kind of just pretty loose still?
There has not been a ton of information released yet for how that metric will be really determined. They are holding report card meetings starting next week. So I plan on attending to hear the latest and the greatest from ODE. But as I know more, I will fill you in as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know that each and every single building and department have been working extremely hard with our students, not only catching students up from some of the time that was missed during COVID, but really pushing for consistency among our classrooms, consistency with curriculum, and really holding students to a high benchmark. And I think all of that attributes to the achievement that we've seen and hopefully will continue to see. So Dr. Miller, congrats to you and your department, and I appreciate all of the work that all of our building principals and our cabinet members do to maintain these standards, so thank you. Next, we have our first building presentation of the year. Mrs. Andrea Vance is here to talk to us a little bit about what's happening at ECLC. Andrea.
Good evening, everyone. I was super excited about being the first principal, but then I had to follow Dr. Miller. You know, no pressure. So we had a very exciting start to the school year. One of the things that all of the buildings were charged with this year was to create our building goals based on our district goals this year. And so tonight I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what our building goals were, and then just kind of highlight some of those things and how we're working through those this year. So this is really tiny, so I don't expect you to read those things, but we have new standards for our preschool, so that will be one of our focuses for this year, and how to implement those. In our kindergarten, we're going to be focusing on how to support and provide strategies for our students for the dyslexia bill that is going to be for K3 students. And we're also going to focus on PBIS. This year, we're going to really be focusing on our referral data. So for students that have those behaviors, we're going to be looking more at our tier 2 and tier 3 teams. So this past year, we applied for our gold status. So part of our silver status that we're going to apply for next is really looking at how to develop those teams and get input from to be able to support those tier 3 students. And then our last one is really looking at climate and culture, and making sure all of our staff feel valued and safe in the building. And so that's our fourth goal that we're going to focus on. So this year we kicked off the year with doing our kindergarten screening, which we've done in the past. We were able to use our AIMSweb data to be able to place students again this year. One of the new components that we added this year was a social emotional rotation, where students were able to come in so that we had a better idea of how to place them into the classrooms. We were able to have our preschool teachers support us and help us in being able to make determinations on what supports they may need coming in, as opposed to maybe not knowing some of those things. And it was very helpful in the process with being able to place students and have a more optimal setting for those kiddos that may need some additional supports with behaviors or things of that nature. The screening also allowed us to, with our schedule, set intervention times. And so one of the things that with those intervention times, we were able to use that AIMSweb data to be able to see how to progress monitor our students that fell in that yellow and red area. Those are going to be the two areas that I'll talk about a little bit in a little bit. And Title will be helping with those students to provide them additional supports throughout the year. So that was really helpful again in the planning process for those intervention times. In each of the teacher schedules, we do have a set planning time for them. So when they're doing those plannings and interventions, that they're going to be able to have an opportunity to switch groups. And so it's not where they're just responsible for providing those interventions, but if they wanted to have a teacher maybe focus on a specific area, they're able to do that. Maybe the teacher takes the other ones. So we wanted to be able to provide an opportunity for them to work together to do that. Our AIMSweb data, very excited to see. They don't this year show these beautiful cones, which if you go to the next slide, it's a little easier to see. And for this year, but I wanted to start with last year's data so you can kind of see in comparison where our students started. So in that area, that chart is 129 students were in the red. And then in our tier 2, we had in that yellow area, I can't read that far. You can see that number for the red honestly decreased a lot. And then by the end, in tier 1, we had 87 in our green. So one of the things that I wanted to show, and the reason why I put this in here from last year, is if you go to the next slide, you're actually able to see that that number from 2023 from this year shows that we had 39% of those students for the start of this year in that red section, which was down from 45% when we started last year. So when Dr. Miller was talking about some of those effects of COVID, we've noticed even just the transition this year of our pre-K and K students coming in, you can tell the difference that they've been around human contact, that they've been out of their homes, which makes a huge difference in their transition, and even transitioning into the assessments this year was a lot easier than it has been in the past. So we've been very excited about just the start of the year with where students were coming in at and having to benchmark. So I kind of shared with the dyslexia bill, but one of the things that we are really focusing on this year is being able to set up those intervention groups and just figuring out where, what interventions specifically that we're going to focus on for those students in order to get the number of students down by the time that we have to do the dyslexia assessment for students, which we will do in the winter. And so right now, we are going to be working with our teachers we have a cutoff score that we have currently that we'll look at to see what students will need those additional interventions. And then at the winter benchmark, that's when we'll identify students. And again, we're not identifying students as being dyslexic. We're identifying some of those behaviors or characteristics that may fall into that category. And one of the things that all of our staff did last year, we were trained in keys to literacy. So that also will assist and help with being able to support those students. For our units of study, I just wanted to share, we do have a new reading units of study this year that our teachers were introduced to. Over the summer, the teachers mapped out some of the units of study and for the reading units, and those were being rolled out. We also met with our half-day teachers because we were finding with our half-day, it was very difficult to get a lot of the curriculum in. And so we mapped out how to adjust the curriculum so that we were able to provide some of those same, the same rigor within the half-day, but make it where they were able to talk and provide data and give them supports for that routine. So we're still working through that this year, but I think having the ability to have that mapped out has been really good this year. So I just took a few of the pictures for some of our workshops. The students were really excited. This is from a classroom. They were starting to do some writing here. And believe it or not, I know a lot of times people think when the students come in that, you have to teach them all of these things. And sometimes it's nice just to be able to walk in and kind of, let them start and go. And if you go to the next slide, in this one, they were in this is one of the reading workshops on the left side where the student was super excited. He's holding up the book. They were starting their rug clubs and they were sitting with a partner side by side, and they were just doing the fundamentals of how to partner read and what that looks like. And then the two pictures on the right, the students were actually again starting with a prompt and were writing about what their favorite animal was, because they were introduced to Mabel. Mabel is the elephant. She is the mascot for units of study. And so they were kind of talking about that, tying in things that were related to their interest or likes. So it was really impressive just to be able to walk in and see students actually writing things and starting off the school year. I remember even before we had the units of study, not seeing this honestly until maybe November. So to be seeing students doing that already, and we haven't even been in school. I think this is our third week, is really great to see. So they're getting the process down. We're continuing to use Hegarty. Hegarty has been great. It is a supplement to our current curriculum. We do use it in pre-K as well. And we found that with using it in pre-K consistently, when the kids are going up, they're already knowing the motions. They're actually able to be exposed to a lot of the rhyming and things. So when they're coming in, It's also great to have the consistency in the schedules. When I'm walking through all the classrooms, I know it's Heggerty time. So I know I'm going to be doing some type of exercise. I'm either going to be, punching out a word or rhyming a word. So the kids love it. And it's just been a really great addition to pre-K and K this year. For our preschool data, I just wanted to mention that, again, we have new standards that we're doing. All of our students, in the past, we did do a screening. This is the first year that we didn't do that, but we did screen all of our new peers this year, which is something that was new. In the past, we hadn't done that. That has been very beneficial to be able to have students that are coming in that we know right off are going to be great role models that are in the classroom, but it also gives us the opportunity for those students, if they are struggling, to be able to identify those students early enough that if they do need interventions, we know that we can provide those for them in our program. So that is something new that we've done. And then we're still continuing to use our pre-K on my way curriculum. As I had shared with PBIS, we are going to go for silver status this year. We did reduce the number of our behavioral referrals, and this is the first year that we have focused on doing a lunch and recess handbook. So all of our recess and lunch aides received this handbook. In addition to that, our staff also received it as well. It has been a great benefit because it not only provides suggestions for activities, but it also kind of spells out for them what our process is. So if a student is needing intervention or they're needing help with a behavior, they kind of have a step-by-step in knowing what to do. The other thing that we've done this year that I stole from Amanda, thank you, is the positive referral forms. And this has been awesome. It's one of my favorite things that I have loved so far this year. The teachers are able to complete a form, and on the form, they can refer a student that is displaying a very positive behavior in the school. So I get enough of the ones that are not so positive, so it's nice to get those. So far, I've received about 10 of them, and again, we've been in school 3 weeks, so I think that's pretty good. But the reaction from parents when I make the phone call is just priceless. And I always have to preface it by saying, they're not in trouble. So, because when I call, there's always a long pause. But the response has been great. Parents really appreciate the feedback. And our teachers are doing a great job, too, with the communication via phone and not just Dojo. So we've really been working through that because parents like to, not only get a message, but also a phone call. But I think it just kind of goes a little extra step when they know that the teacher has recognized them and had the principal call for that reason. So that's been wonderful. And then I just put in our matrix and what we're continuing to follow. So that hasn't changed. And then I just wanted to say thank you for a great start. This photo just speaks to my heart. It's from the first day of school. This is actually not a preschooler, but it's one of our preschoolers' smaller siblings. But I just see this and I think about this is our future. And to me, looking at this photo, this is where they start, and being able to set a foundation for them that is very positive and welcoming is what I'm very excited for. So when I saw this, I had to put it in. Flip Flop is actually currently at my building. I don't know if he's going to be returned or not, but the kids love him. And I just, again, want to thank you for your time and the opportunity just to be with kids again this year. It's been great. Anybody have questions?
The assessments, are those going to go home to the parents at some point,
Or Ames Web, or
the assessments as far as class placement and?
Yeah, so the assessments we don't send home. We do have Ames Web scores that we'll send information about, but those were just used to be able to determine if a student is going to need, and for STAR, if they're going to need a reading improvement plan or a REP. So if parents do need if the student does need a reading improvement plan, that is something that we would send home to the parents.
And Eli's thrilled with the writing workshops. I quickly was reminded that it's better let him read what he wrote and explain the picture versus completely blowing it. And the look on his face, like, duh, you didn't know what that was. So, but yeah, you could tell the writing workshop has started because it's one thing after another. He's written to me and wanted to read it. So he's really excited about the start of the school year. And I'm excited because the only phone call I've gotten was a bloody nose. So
Yeah, they love the workshop, and like I said, I've just seen so much growth with the program in itself. Just the things that I think before that we thought they couldn't do, that just in allowing them the opportunity to do it, and as you said, explaining it, you know, I'll go in sometimes and try to either read it or I'm looking at their picture and I'm like, oh, I love your spider. And they're like, that's my mom.
I feel better. I didn't blow it that bad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vance. Next up is superintendent's report. That was a good one.
And, here's an opportunity for hearing of the public. Anybody in attendance would like to address the Board of Education? Now's your opportunity. And then we'll move on.
We have announcements, Mr. Bucko?
We do.
Would that be next?
Sure.
I was just curious.
Yeah, go ahead.
From what I understand, today is National Voter Registration Day for all the millions of people who are going to watch this at some point before October 10th. I want you to know that October 10th is the very last day to register to vote here in the great state of Ohio. That's my announcement.
Thank you.
And also, we'd like to thank everybody that came out to the community forum last night. We had a nice turnout. There were some great questions. We had a group that went around and toured the building and seen the condition of the high school. So I just want to thank everybody that was in attendance last night. It really was a nice turnout. All right, move right into the consent agenda. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda resolution as presented.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Tamara, second by Ms. McCarthy. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Grigsby. Yes. Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes. Okay, finance report, Ms. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Vaca. We have 3 items to consider tonight for the finance report. First, we have a resolution to approve the finance reports for August 2023. We also have a resolution for the fiscal year 2024 permanent appropriations. And lastly, we have a resolution to amend the fiscal year 2024 certificate of estimated resources. I move to approve this finance report in one reading.
Moved by Ms. McCarthy, second by Mr. Grigsby. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Grigsby. Yes. Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes. Okay, buildings and operations report. We have 2 items to consider under the operations report. First item is a resolution to solicit bids for the purchase of modular classrooms, i.e. trailers, for the Liberty Elementary School to be placed for the 24-25 school year. Second item for approval is an easement agreement between the North Ridgeville City Schools and Columbia Gas of Ohio, allowing work to commence along Ranger Way for the new police station project. I move to approve these items in one reading.
Second.
Moved by myself, second by Ms. Tamara. Is there any discussion? When are they going to start the work for the immediately?
Immediately, so they actually had asked for confirmation tonight that the vote was affirmative, and we're looking to stage equipment, I believe, as early as tomorrow morning.
And do we know where they're staging the equipment?
Nowhere.
Be off of the road,
Should be very,
east side of the road is my understanding of it.
By the practice field or?
I believe more south of the practice field.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Vaca,
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira,
yes.
Mr. Grigsby. Yes. Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Saxon.
Yes.
Human Resources report, Ms. Saxon.
We have a few items to consider under the Human Resources report. 1, support staff resignation, 6 support staff appointments, 1 support staff substitute contract, 4 NREA supplemental contracts, 3 non-NREA supplemental contracts, 8 certified staff adjustments, 1 support staff adjustment. And move to approve the human resources report in 1 reading.
Second?
Saxon, second by Ms. McCarthy. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Grigsby,
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes. It is recommended that the Board of Education enter into executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of public employees, and matters related to negotiations of public employees. There will be no action to follow.
Second?
Second by Ms. McCarthy. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Grigsby,
Yes.
Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes.
6:35.